Large areas of the Southwest are exceptionally dry.
Dangerous drought at Lake Mead. It provides 40 million Americans with water, and now it's at the lowest level since it was created in the 1930s.
What if the worst drought in 1,200 years was not just destroying the American Southwest, but exposing what was buried beneath it? Bodies in barrels, a ghost town, a classified Cold War bomber, and a lake that is finally running out of ways to keep its secrets. Here is what nobody expected. Lake Mead is the largest reservoir in the United States. It supplies water to more than 40 million people. For nearly a century, it has been deep enough to hide anything. But the water is disappearing, and what it is leaving behind is not just mud and cracked earth. It is evidence. Human remains sealed in rusted drums. An entire town swallowed in the 1930s and never seen again. The wreckage of a 60-ton military bomber that sat on the bottom for over 50 years. None of this was supposed to surface. None of it was supposed to be found. But the drought does not care what was meant to stay hidden. And the lake, for the first time in its history, is talking. The lake that stopped hiding. In 2022, Lake Mead dropped to a level it had not reached since the reservoir first began filling in 1935.
Lake Mead with water levels at historic lows. 2 decades of drought.
170 feet below the high water mark. Entire shorelines that had been submerged for decades were suddenly exposed. And then people started finding things in the mud. Lake Mead is the largest reservoir in the United States. It sits on the Colorado River at the Nevada-Arizona border, formed by the construction of Hoover Dam in the 1930s. Built to supply water, electricity, and irrigation to the American Southwest. More than 40 million people depend on it. For most of its history, the lake held steady, deep, full, reliable. Then the drought began. Not a single dry season. A slow, grinding collapse that stretched across more than 2 decades. Year after year, the water dropped. Boat ramps were gated shut. Marina docks had to be dragged into deeper water. A white mineral ring, tall as a 15-story building, stained the canyon walls like a scar the lake could no longer hide. By the summer of 2022, Lake Mead had fallen to just 27% of its total capacity. The waterline had pulled back hundreds of feet from where it once stood, and the ground it left behind was not empty. It was covered in secrets. What the mud gave back. On May 1st, 2022, a boater near Hemingway Harbor noticed a rusted metal barrel lodged in the newly exposed lake bed. He thought it was debris. Then he saw what was inside: human remains. A body sealed in that barrel and dumped into the lake decades earlier. Las Vegas police confirmed a gunshot wound to the head. The clothing still clinging to the remains: a pair of light blue jeans, Trax brand sneakers, a silver Timex watch. Dated the killing to the mid to late 1970s. Someone had been murdered, stuffed into a drum, and dropped into the lake. 6 days later, 2 sisters paddleboarding near Colville Bay spotted something pale in a freshly surfaced sandbar, a second set of skeletal remains. By August, 4 more sets of human bones had appeared across different sections of the lake. A lieutenant with Las Vegas police told reporters what everyone was already thinking. As the water drops, more will come. He was right. By the end of that year, 6 sets of remains had been recovered. Some were drowning victims from years past. Others could not be explained so easily. The lake had been holding them, quietly, patiently, beneath hundreds of feet of water. And now, foot by foot, it was giving them back. Not because anyone asked, because the water had no choice. A town that should not exist. Deeper into the receding shoreline, hikers began stumbling across something that made even less sense than the bodies. Foundations, roads, the crumbling chimney of an ice cream parlor. Buried beneath the surface of Lake Mead for nearly 90 years was an entire town, St. Thomas, Nevada, founded by Mormon pioneers in 1865 along the Muddy River. At its peak, roughly 500 people lived there. They built a schoolhouse, a church, a post office. They farmed cotton and grain using hand-dug irrigation canals. It was a small, stubborn community carved out of the desert. Then, in 1928, President Coolidge authorized the construction of Hoover Dam. The government bought the land. The water began to rise. Residents were told to leave. Most did, but a handful refused. They stayed until the lake came for them. The last man in St. Thomas, a farmer named Hugh Lord, paddled away from his own front door on a makeshift raft as the water swallowed his home in 1938. The town vanished beneath 60 feet of water. For decades, nobody saw it again. Now, it stands in the open air, cracked earth where streets once ran, foundations baking in the sun, a ghost town that drowned and came back. 3 times the lake has revealed it. Each time the drought got worse. This time, it has not gone back under. The barrel and the bullet. The body in the barrel changed everything. This was not a drowning. This was not an accident. This was an execution, carried out in a city ruled by the mob and buried in a lake 30 miles from the Las Vegas Strip. The method was textbook organized crime. The victim had been shot in the head, stuffed into a 55-gallon oil drum, loaded onto a boat, and dropped into roughly 100 feet of water. A historian at the Las Vegas Mob Museum recognized the pattern immediately. Almost a carbon copy of the 1976 killing of Johnny Roselli, a mobster found in a barrel floating in a bay outside Miami. The timing fit perfectly. Between 1971 and 1974, Las Vegas saw more gangland killings than in the previous 25 years combined. The Chicago outfit was running skim operations out of the Stardust Hotel. People who became problems had a way of disappearing. One name kept surfacing. A man connected to the casino boat operation at Lake Mead. He told his wife he was going to lunch with someone interested in buying his boat. Nobody ever saw him again. The FBI built a composite face from the skull, uploaded the DNA to a federal database. As of today, the man in the barrel remains unidentified. No name, no family, no justice. What the water was protecting. For decades, nobody looked. Nobody had a reason to. Lake Mead was a recreation area. 7 million visitors a year, coming for fishing, boating, and camping. The water was deep. The secrets were deeper. And the people who put them there were counting on one thing. The lake would never give them back. The desert has always been a convenient place to make someone disappear. Shallow graves in the sand, bodies left in the heat. But the lake was even better. Cold, dark, pressurized. No witnesses, no evidence, no trail. Just silence and 100 feet of water. The mob understood this. So did anyone else with something to hide. For decades, the bottom of Lake Mead sat undisturbed, a graveyard nobody would ever visit. But the killers made one miscalculation. They assumed the water would stay. The drought did what no investigation ever could. No informant, no surveillance operation, no wiretap. The water simply moved, slowly, relentlessly, foot by foot, year after year, pulling the shoreline back like a curtain. And what it revealed was not just debris, it was evidence. Bone fragments in dried mud, barrels rusting in the open air, entire stretches of lakebed that had not seen sunlight since the 1930s, suddenly exposed for anyone to walk across. The lake itself became the witness. The bomber nobody was meant to find. The bodies were not the only secret the lake had been keeping. In the Overton arm of the reservoir, resting on the bottom in the cold, dark water, sat a 60-ton Boeing B-29 Superfortress, one of the most advanced bombers ever built during the Second World War. On July 21, 1948, the aircraft was flying a classified mission over the lake, testing missile trajectories, gathering data for the Cold War. The altimeter was improperly calibrated. The surface was smooth as glass. No white caps, no horizon line, nothing to judge distance. The plane came in too low. It struck the water at 230 miles per hour, skipped once across the surface, tore off 3 of its 4 engines, and sank. All 5 crew members survived. The plane disappeared. For over 50 years, nobody knew where it was. Divers searched. The military moved on. The wreck became a rumor. A ghost story passed around dive shops in Nevada. Then, in 2001, a group of local divers found it using a fishing sonar, still remarkably intact, the aluminum fuselage still gleaming, a propeller still twisted from the impact. Inside the open cockpit, the Control wheel, the seats, even the remnants of a parachute, exactly where they had been since 1948. The lake had preserved it like a time capsule. The lake is still talking. And now the water is falling again. A federal report released in May of 2026 projected that Lake Mead could drop 20 feet lower than the record set in 2022. The same record that uncovered the barrel, the bones, the ghost town, and the bomber. The reservoir currently sits at roughly 1,052 feet above sea level. Full capacity is 1,229 feet. It has not reached that mark since 1983. 6 major reservoirs across the country have already hit their lowest levels in 30 years. The Colorado River system, the lifeline for more than 40 million people, is running out of storage, and every foot the water drops exposes something new. Speedboats wedged vertically in the mud. A World War II-era Higgins landing craft rising from the shallows like a skeleton. Houseboats beached in a landscape that looks nothing like a lake anymore. The Southwest is drying out. The worst drought in 1,200 years is not ending. It is accelerating, and Lake Mead, once deep enough to bury anything, no longer has that power. The water kept these secrets for decades. The bodies, the town, the bomber, the barrel, all of it hidden, all of it protected by depth and silence. Not anymore. The American Southwest is not running low on water. It is running out. And every foot that disappears from Lake Mead pulls back another layer of a history that powerful people, dangerous people, and entire government agencies assumed would stay buried forever. The mob counted on the depth. The military counted on the silence. An entire town was erased from the map and drowned beneath 60 feet of water. For decades, the strategy worked. It is not working anymore. The drought is not slowing down. Federal projections say the lake could fall another 20 feet by 2027. That means more shoreline exposed, more lake bed uncovered, more secrets dragged into the daylight, whether anyone is ready for them or not. Lake Mead held its silence for nearly a century. Now, it is giving everything back. The question nobody can answer is, what else is still down there? If you think the secrets buried beneath the surface are always the ones most worth finding, subscribe now, because the water is still dropping.